Alright guys, good morning. It's Thursday. It's about 9:30 and this is going to be a little how to set up your spray gun video for my buddy Jerry, and having a little trouble getting dry spray with a high build primer. So I'm going to go through a couple of things here this morning. This is how I would do it. I'm not an expert painter, but I know my way around how to set up a spray gun, so here we go. Okay, this is a product I believe you're using, the MP3HS, which is a high build urethane type primer surfacer, the Matrix brand. And this primer, from what I've seen, I have never used it, but some high build primer surfacers are so thick that you need an enormous tip size to spray them. Now, that being said, this says a 2.0 tip to a 2.1 tip, okay, whether it's HVLP or conventional, it's not going to matter on the tip size. And the HVLP says 5 to 10 psi at the air cap, and the conventional says 40 to 50 psi at the gun. Now, reading that, I don't know if you're using an HVLP or a conventional, but I'm going to show you something that maybe you do or don't know already about how to set up the air pressure at your spray gun. Now, if you're getting dry spray where it's coarse and sandy feeling, that's always either an overpressure or a lack of fluid flow, because if there's plenty of material, the material will flow a certain bit. But the high build primers, I mean, there's going to be some texture to it a little bit, but if it's real fine, sandy texture, that's always dry spray, which means too much air pressure or not enough fluid coming out of the gun. So I'm going to do two real quick things here on two different spray guns, and explain a couple of things, because you were saying you didn't exactly know what the knobs on each of the spray guns do. So I'm going to show you two different styles of setups of guns, and you can decipher, you know, which one looks more like yours. I think my SATA is going to look more like what you've got as far as where the knobs are located. So here we go. This knob on the side right here, which I believe yours is up here closer to the air cap a little more, this is your fan pattern control. Usually all the way counterclockwise, so all the way this way, is fully open, and this is at its stop here. And you can turn it the other way and narrow that fan pattern down, and that will narrow your fan. So instead of having a wide fan pattern like this, it will start to bring it down to a narrower fan pattern. And when you're doing that and turning this and reducing that fan pattern, what that control actually does is you'll always have air coming out of this center around the fluid tip and out of the little holes next to it. And I don't know if you can see those. I think you can. Okay, but what that does is it limits the amount of air that comes out the holes in the side of the air horns, that makes your pattern more elongated and, you know, straight like the line in this, the crease of this towel here. So if you have lots of air coming out of the air horns on the sides with a wide fan pattern setting, excuse me, I'm kind of getting over a cold here, so if I'm mumbling a little bit, I apologize. And buddy, you can always give me a call and we can go over this too. If you have a lot of air coming out of these, it will make the pattern narrow and long. If you have minimal air coming out of the air horns, which means you have the fan pattern closed and the majority of your air is actually coming out of the center of that, you will have a round or shorter fan pattern depending on how far you close this air valve. This is an air control valve to the air horns in the air cap. That's all the fan pattern control does. That's how that works. When you're spraying pretty much any material, you want this all the way open, unless you're trying to get into a real narrow area and you need a little bit wetter pattern and a little narrower pattern. And of course you can tighten that up so that you can shoot into a narrow area. You know, you don't need 14-inch fan pattern to try and spray in an area like, say, for instance, if you had to spray, say this was, we'll go out and look at the Super Duty here. This doesn't have a painted bumper, but this would give you an idea. Shit, you know what, that isn't going to help you. Let's look at the Duramax and see if I got something that'll help you out. Say you were trying to spray in this lower valance and opening like this, you know, and try and get down around those edges. Of course, the fog light wouldn't be in it. Or the vehicles that have the roundish fog light holes, sometimes you narrow it down a little bit to sort of spray inside. But of course, when you narrow that pattern, you must reduce your fluid flow. Okay? But getting back to the setups on the gun. We'll get into that a little bit later. Your other knob right here is your fluid material control, and all that does is limit the travel when you pull the trigger back of how far the needle pulls out and away from the fluid tip itself. Okay, so if you have this knob screwed in, and I always shoot with them all the way open, but if you have this knob screwed all the way in and you go to pull your trigger, it's not going to really move, which means that fluid tip or fluid needle is not going to move either. So as you open this all the way open, you look at the trigger again, and it goes all the way back to its stop. That means that needle is getting maximum travel away from the fluid tip and allowing the maximum amount of fluid to pass through that tip. When you're spraying primer, especially if you're a little undersized on your tip, I think you said you had a 1.8 and this product calls for a 2.0 or 2.1. This is their recommendations. A lot of times you can spray with a little smaller tip, even though it says reducer not recommended. You can put a splash of reducer, like 10%, in with these products and just allow a longer flash time. The reason they most likely don't want you to put reducer in these products is because most shops want to cycle their vehicles quickly, and they don't want to wait for flash times. So as you add reducer, you have to add flash time to it so that you make sure all those solvents have evaporated before you put your second coat on it. And sometimes it can slow your dry time a little and things like that. But I can't really think of any product off the top of my head that I would never, ever, ever put reducer in. But most of the time, we don't put reducers in the things that don't call for them. Usually the reducer is to reduce the viscosity, is what it's used for. So if they say no, I try and heed those warnings. But spraying primer, especially you're spraying a gas tank and things like that, and that high build primer just may be too thick to go through that tip. Okay, so maybe a bigger tip is better, but viscosity plays a huge role in that. The gun you have, I don't care how cheap it is, it should spray primer just fine. You might have a little texture, but it would be orange peel and not sandy. And orange peel would be just, you know, as it's explained, the texture of the peel of an orange. Okay. This SATA actually has another control valve on it right here, and this is does the same function as a regulator. It's an air micrometer, just like this is on this DeVilbiss gun right here. This will regulate your flow of air into the gun itself. Okay. Now looking at this DeVilbiss gun, this has got a smaller tip in it. This has got like a 1.5 tip. This one is your fan pattern control, the little skinny one. And the lower one, you can see it's directly in line. That little barrel right there is part of the fluid needle. That is what regulates how far your trigger pulls back. Now you notice that trigger's going all the way back. Okay, I keep them fully open. Now sometimes when you're doing a little part and you tighten your fan up a little bit, you can always just pull a little less on your trigger and just kind of gauge how much material is coming out by how wet the panel is. That's comes with experience a little bit and a little bit of practice. So those are the two different ways to adjust two different styles of gun. Now I want to take you out and I'm going to hook this gun up to the air. And there's something else I'm not sure if you're doing correctly. You might have it down. I didn't. You didn't show how you did it, so I just want to make sure you know how to set your air pressure on the gun. So I'm going to put you on the stand and take you with me out here. And we're going to hook this up to the air line. Now, if you see in the book that they talk about an HVLP gun and what pressure the product should be sprayed at might be 5 to 10 pounds at the cap. The lower numbers, like 5 pounds, might apply if you've narrowed your fan down, or you have a extremely large fluid tip. You don't need the pressure to put the material on the panel wet. But typically, if this gun is an HVLP gun, which it is, and that product says 5 to 10 psi at the cap, you're probably going to be spraying it at 10 psi at the cap. Now, in the instructions for most of them, most guns, it will say in order to get 10 psi at the cap, which is the maximum allowable amount for an HVLP gun, that you need X amount of inlet pressure, which will regulate down here. This one is stamped right on the cap, 23 psi, to achieve that 10 psi at the cap. So I'm going to hook this up to the air supply, and I'll bring you guys so you can see. Okay, there's our regulator. And I'm going to try and stand behind the camera and watch this. Now, when I pull that trigger, it's at 100 pounds now. That's what I have it regulated at the wall. This is at the end of the hose, so and we have our stupid little filter on here, but we're not going to worry about getting into that right now. When you pull your trigger to the first stage, it lets nothing but air out. And then when you pull it completely is when the needle starts to move away from the fluid tip, and you get your fluid increasing as you pull that back. So here's air, and then all the way back is fluid. Okay, now to set this air control here, you have to get air flowing through the gun, and then you will adjust it accordingly. So I'm going to get this out of whack a little. You can see that was at about 40 psi. This gun is regulated for 23 psi. So we're going to pull that trigger to the first stage, and I'm going to turn the air down until it reads 23 psi. And that's it. So every time you pull that trigger, that needle should land on somewhere right around 23 psi if you don't have a huge pressure drop in your piping or any other restrictions. So I hope that helps you on how to set that up. You may already have that down to a science. That's great. The other thing that can cause your dry spray problems is in your cap for your cup, there's a vent hole in the top. And if that vent hole gets plugged or restricted, especially with the higher viscosity products, it will not allow that product to flow by gravity, which is the design of this gun. The air will draw it when you pull the trigger, but if there's no vent opening in the top, if for some reason that's plugged, you won't get any material or very little out of your fluid tip when you're painting. You may have everything else set up perfect, but you will have no fluid come out of that tip, or very little. With the high build primers and really any kind of primer, you might be spraying where you tip the gun back or you tip it this way, and some primer will splash up in there and block that hole. And we're going to go back into the mixing room here. it doesn't take much to block those holes up. I'll take that lid off and kind of show you. And hopefully the camera will actually focus on this. But that hole's not very big, but you can sort of see, maybe I'll put it over the book, you can see the white shining through there, okay? That hole's clear, but it doesn't take much to block it up. It just takes a couple of splashes of a real high build primer, because that hole's so small, and it'll bridge that hole completely off. And if that hole's bridged off with primer, you won't be able to get enough fluid out of your tip, because it just won't allow the material to come out of the cup. So check on that. I've done it before, you know, even doing this for the last 20 years. You tip the gun and something splashes in there and the gun starts spraying like shit and you get pissed off and you go clean the gun out and think there was a restriction in your fluid tip or something else going on, and it was that hole, okay? Or, you know, I'll put some cleaner in the gun and I'll grab another gun because I think that one's screwed up. And that's not usually, you know, what ends up being the problem is this, okay, that hole. Now, you also can say, well, I spray with these liners, like I have on my Plus here, okay, which is a plastic liner in there, and there's no vent. But those are a very, very, very soft plastic that will collapse as the material gets pulled by the flow of air through the gun. You have nothing to collapse with an aluminum cup. So that's the way these work. And you know, that's sort of important to know about that vent opening. That vent opening will fuck you 6 ways from Sunday if it plugs up. So that's how to set up your air pressure. I know your gun calls for I don't know if it's your gun that calls for 40 to 50 psi, or if it's just the fact that it's a quote-unquote conventional gun, you know, a Princess Auto gun, which I have no problem with. I have shitty not Harbor Freight, but, you know, just junk guns that I've sprayed primer through, and that never is the problem. The problem is always the fluid flow. But I've heard Darren talk about it. A couple other guys had problems spraying this primer, and I saw him open a gallon of this primer one time and stick a stir stick in it, and the shit is so thick that the stir stick will just stand up in it. My primer that I spray is not that way. It's a lot thinner viscosity product. I don't have any super high build primer in here, but I do have, let's see if we can find it in the cabinet here. Here it is. I have some feather fill here, which is pretty thick stuff. And this may be closer to what you have. I'm going to put you back on the stand. I know this video is getting really long, but I really want to help you out if this is the problem. Now, it could come down to it really being the gun, but I really doubt it's the gun. I've sprayed primer through some real piece of shit guns before, and usually it's an adjustment error of some sort, or it's dirty. Something's dirty. That vent hole in the cap is dirty, or something of that nature. I don't know. I'm pretty sure this stuff's kind of thick. I don't know if it's as thick as that ultra high build primer, but it's pretty thick. And it's actually separated in here because it's been sitting for a long time, but it's actually, I mean, when you have, when your product's kind of thick like that, see the big wad on the end of there? I don't have it stirred up real good, but if this can was full, that stick would stand straight up, and there's no way that primer would spray through a 1.5 or a 1.8 tip. You need like a 2.0 or 2.2 or something bigger, and some of those primers you even need a bigger tip than that to spray them. So those are all things you really got to keep in mind. I really don't think it's your gun, but without having it in my hands, of course, I can't tell you with 100% degree of certainty that that is not your problem. All these fluid tip recommendations that they put in the books are all based on viscosity, on what size it needs to let that material flow out. So bottom line is that material has to be thin enough to flow out of that tip. Something else you could try, and it means you're going to have to clean your gun again, but mix up a little material like you're going to spray it, and I hope you're straining the material too, because that could be a problem. Even the high build primers, you have to strain it all because it'll only take one piece of trash in that fluid tip to block it up. If a piece of trash gets in that tip and blocks it up, then your fluid flow is restricted. It doesn't have to be a very big piece of trash, because 1.8 size tip or 2.1 size tip, like they recommend here, that's millimeters, and you're on the metric system, so I know you know how small of an opening that is. A speck of dirt is probably a millimeter or two. So all of a sudden, you're already shooting in an undersized tip for the product, and you're not reducing it at all. If that piece of trash gets in there in the 1.8, you're talking maybe it might be a 1.5 or a 1.6 if that piece of trash is in there. Urethane products are hard to clean out of guns. You see a lot of guys, and myself included, I'll pour, I don't use lacquer thinner to clean anymore because it's been giving me so much problems. They'll dump reducer in the cup, put the lid on, put a towel over it, shake it up, and then hold the gun over a cup or something and pull the trigger, and the material will squirt out of the gun. That gets most of it out, but sometimes it'll leave a fine residue in there, and it's a catalyzed product, and I don't care if you store them wet or not. Sometimes that product will kick and stick to the walls of that fluid tip, and once it does that, then you've got a reduced size fluid tip. It restricts that opening. So that's something else. I'm the kind of guy who breaks my gun down and takes the fluid tip out every time I spray with it. Not always with the primer gun, but if I've sprayed 2 or 3 coats on and had to wait like 30 or 40 minutes with material in the gun, I will actually tear it down. If it's just a quick one shot where I can just do 1 coat, sometimes I'll do a shake and squirt on them, and then I'll use this gun cleaner right here. It seems to work better than lacquer thinner. The lacquer thinner just doesn't take the material out of the gun like it used to. It's like it lost its punch somewhere over the years. They took all the good stuff out of it. So that's another thing, a little bit of restriction from that. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, okay, I don't have a gun with a filter in it, but I'm going to show you something here. And I have some in one of these cabinets. This will fuck you like no tomorrow. I used to run these a long time ago, and I never threw them all away. If you have a filter like that, and I'm going to put you back on the stand here, this will be the last thing that I talk about. If you have one of those filters in the gun, these go down in the body of the gun under the cup. So I'll take the cup off this gun because I know it's an easy one, and those filters go right in here. Those filters, I'm going to tell you right now, the first thing you do when you get a gun, throw those in the garbage. Pull it out, take the cup off the gun so you can see in there. You can see there's nothing in there, but those filters are made to go something like this. Take that filter, and I'm not sure about this one. This one may be made to go, let's see which way it goes. Some of them go down in the gun body, some of them will actually go in the cup. This is the style that goes in the cup. So you have your cup, let me try and get in the damn picture here. Got your cup opening here, and this will actually go in like this. Okay. You can flip the cup over. We're going to take the lid off and look at it. You've already reduced the diameter of area that your fluid can get through the cup, okay? And by doing that, you're restricting fluid flow. Also, these things are single-use items, okay? To get all the shit out of the screens of those, I would like to put that up in the realm of nearly impossible. And a high build thick product that you're spraying through a 2.1 tip, it'll flow so slowly through those openings in that mesh that you won't get enough fluid flow out of it. It will totally fuck you up. So if your gun, you pull your cup off and your gun has some sort of filter down in there, throw that thing in the fucking garbage can. Get rid of it. It will cause you more grief than it will ever help you. Strain your product with a regular strainer. You know, I know you have paper strainers, but use the paper strainers and strain the product. The high build products don't like to go through the strainer worth of shit, but you have to strain it, even if it takes a minute for it to run through that strainer. Let it go, because if there's a chunk in that primer, it'll block that tip up so fast you won't know what to do. Let's see if there's anything else that I haven't mentioned. I think that's sort of the most important things you need to know. If you don't know whether you're getting your gun clean enough or not, they make this spray gun paint remover made by Clean Strip called Naked Gun. It says it removes cured paint right on there, and that is no bullshit. I have taken apart my guns that I think I cleaned thoroughly and tear them down, and I'll tear one down here real quick. I know you've seen me do this, but I'm going to put it in this video so you have it all in one spot. I've used this Clean Strip cleaner in a gun that I thought was completely clean and wiped down. Now, I don't ever soak a gun in it, but I will take a fluid tip out and put a fluid tip. Let's see, which gun do I want to do? We'll do the Sada, because the Sada is easier to tear down. I found material curdling in the fluid tip in one of those. So take your air cap off, pull your trigger back, and hold on, because there's spring tension on your fluid control valve. Pull the needle out. Okay, now be careful when you remove the fluid tip. I've got a special wrench here, okay, and we're going to take the fluid tip out. I guess you could put this in a soft jaw vise, but it really shouldn't be stupid tight, and bigger people tend to over tighten things because they're stronger, and it just seems normal. That was actually a little, almost too tight, so we'll take that tip out. You don't want to ever slip off when you're taking this fluid tip off, because if you ding the corner of it, or if you store it without the air cap on it and this gets smacked against something, it will dent that fluid tip. This is only, it's steel, but it's not hardened steel. It will put a dent in it and it will never spray right. So of course we take the fluid tip out. Now when you clean, you want to run one of your brushes through this orifice right here, down through the top, scrub, 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 squirt clean paint gun cleaner through there, not reused stuff, clean stuff, fresh stuff. And if you're going to scrub with a brush, the lacquer thinner will work, because you're mechanically agitating it, and it'll help you dissolve it. But if you use the better gun cleaner, you're even a step ahead of the game, in my opinion. Now this fluid tip, you can see through there, that hole ain't very big. It don't take much to plug that damn hole up in the center of that fluid tip, and that material will actually build up on the sides of this fluid tip and dry, and it only takes one chunk of that shit to block that hole up. Whether you think it's fine or not, you might spray a lighter viscosity product and say it sprays fine, but the minute you put something that needs more material flow, it'll block it up. So you take, you tear it down and you scrub in here with your gun cleaning brush, and you can take a broom straw or something and punch it through the hole in the middle. Don't ever stick a metal object down in there if you can avoid it, because you'll put scratches in it, and then it'll just make the coating that you're spraying through it that much easier to stick to that. Okay, that stuff's all got to be clean, clean, clean. And sometimes just running the thinner through it, no matter how clean the stream of fluid is coming out of this tip when you're done, there may still be shit in there, and it only takes one chunk of it to break loose at the wrong time to screw you. That's why the body shops have the gun washers, because they put pressurized fluid through those tips. They've got an apparatus that plugs in the top, and it holds the needle open fully and continually circulates clean fluid through that fluid tip and through the gun body. And that is like a mechanical way of agitating it and getting it to come out. So when I put the fluid needle back in, I'll get this nut started that reduces its travel, and you can see I'm holding the trigger all the way open, and I will turn this until it hits that. You can feel it hit the trigger. Stop. That's full open. That's where you want it to be. So, alright, I hope this helped you out. If it didn't, give me a call. We'll chat. I'll try and help you out the best I can over the phone. You know, we got 31 minutes worth of video here. I think that covered everything. I just don't want to see you waste money on a primer gun for a limited use item, because I really don't think that's the problem. But if you wanted to go out and spend $150 as opposed to maybe $50 and buy like a DeVilbiss finish line gun or a starting line gun with a bigger tip in it, I wouldn't criticize you for doing that. I've sprayed through the cheap guns for primer, and they're fine, you know, but eventually the seals, it's not worth replacing the seals in the gun from cleaning them, so I just end up throwing them away. You know, when it costs you $25 or $30 for a seal kit for a $50 gun, that's the time to throw it in the shit can. It's just not worth having. So that's my opinion. That's the way I do it. If that helps you out, that's awesome. You know, bottom line, to me, it's a viscosity problem. I don't see any other reason that you would have a sandy, dry finish other than you're not getting any material out of the gun. If it's just normal orange peel, it just may not be going on quite wet enough, so maybe that's just a fluid tip size. So go ahead and buy yourself a finish line or something like that. Or the gun that I really have my eyes on for a primer gun, for an inexpensive one, is the Iwata Air Gunza series, but I don't know if you can get a 2.1 or a 2.0 tip in it. I think they only come with a 1.8. And if you're going to be spraying that super high build primer, this MP3HS, I think it is, that's the epoxy. If you're going to be spraying, this is the one I spray, and I'm having some problems with it, so I'm not sure to recommend that one until I figure out what the problem is. This is the one you're spraying. You know, I would probably recommend the 2KPB, which is their high performance. It's not a super high build, but I don't think you need a super high build primer. If you're going to spray the sides of your car to block them pin straight, go ahead and use that ultra high build primer or a polyester primer like the Feather Fill. You know, the ultra high build primers, all they do is hide piss poor bodywork, in my opinion. I don't know that they're a time saver, but I mean, with you spraying a fuel tank, I don't really think you need it. But if that was just something you got for whatever reason, by all means use it up. I'm not telling you it's a bad product or it shouldn't be used. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that's typically not something that I use as an ultra high build primer unless I'm trying to get something real straight and I know I'm going to do a lot of blocking on it. With a fuel tank or underside of a car or something like that, I'm pretty sure you're not looking for a no orange peel finish. And quite honestly, with that fuel tank, if it's just a little orange peel, hit it with some 320 and go ahead and put whatever, if you're putting a single stage paint on it or you're Raptor linering it or whatever, hit it with some 320 and go. Or even 220 would probably be okay, but the coarser the grit, the faster you're going to cut through it. And a lot of times when you get a dry film build on it from lack of material flow, you won't have as much material on the panel as you think you do. It all ended up just bouncing off of it and going into the air itself. And another thing, last but not least, if you don't keep your shop heated and the material sits in the shop like mine, you need to warm the material up, take it in the house overnight, because cold is going to change the viscosity and make that stuff so thick it won't want to spray. I do it with my clear coats. I even do it with the base coat. I'll take, if I'm going to be priming tomorrow, this gallon of primer right here will go in the truck and go home and sit inside my house all night in 68 degrees. Okay, I won't leave it here where it's 50 or 48 degrees overnight. It's just it's too hard to get it warmed up. Takes too long. So, all right, buddy. Hope that helps you. Take care. If you got any questions, you know the number. So we'll talk to you soon, and good luck. Later, bud.